it's a little windy today, but I am in Bellevue, Michigan, Eaton County, and behind me is the Dyer Kiln. It's a very old, historic kiln, has a lot to do with the history of this city and this whole region. Today, the Eaton County Historical Commission is going to be dedicating a historic marker, and I'm going to be attending the ceremony, and I'm going to share it with you. So come along and join me.
First, I'd like to welcome you all to Bellevue. I don't want to take much time, but there's a couple things I'd like you to keep in mind both during this ceremony and after. First, remember that the history of a place is often bigger than what you'll find in books or on plaques. I've only lived here for 25 years, a relative newcomer compared to those whose families built Bellevue, literally and figuratively. Incidentally, I'm Lisa Lewitzky. I'm the Bellevue Township Clerk. But today happens to be the International Day of the World's Indigenous People. So first I'd like to acknowledge that before our European ancestors moved to Michigan and built amazing structures like this kiln, the Potawatomi lived here, making their homes and community in alliance with their neighbors, the Ottawa and Ojibwe of the Three Fires Alliance, and the Miami to the southwest. The other thing I'd like us all to remember is that none of the people who've lived here over the centuries managed it alone. They and we come together to build the communities that support us. Charles Dyer didn't build this kiln single-handedly. It took many people from this area and beyond who had different backgrounds and beliefs. The one belief they surely held in common was that this was and is a good place to build a home, raise a family, work, and create a community. With that, I'd like to introduce a man I've worked with over the past few years to create a larger county-wide community, our County Commissioner, Jim Mott.
Okay, before I give my speech, again, my name's Jim Mott. I'm the chairman of the Eaton County Commissioners. Okay, next up is Deb Lewitzky. Okay. She's going to introduce, we got a couple of awards, right?
Awards.
Okay, all right. And she's on the Eaton County Historical Commission.
And so is he, so we appreciate all his work. Okay. Every year, the Historical Commission recognizes several people who have worked above and beyond in historical preservation. This year, we have 3 people that we feel are more than worthy for recognition based on their efforts to preserve history. There's actually one more recipient that we will be honoring at another event, but that person doesn't know, so we can't say anything about that person yet. So anyways, we first want to recognize the person that made this day possible here at the Kiln, Pat Terrell. She doesn't know either that she was going to get recognized. Julie Kimmer here has her award. Pat has worked tirelessly on every aspect of this project, from fundraising, research, application writing, advertising, and promotion, working with the county, finding stonemasons to do the work needed to save this important piece of Michigan history, and so much more. We want her to know that her efforts are very much appreciated, and we thank her for making the entire commission look good. But it's not just the kiln that she has shown a dedication to. At the same time, she's been compiling and editing stories about Eaton County for a new book that the commissioners are working on. She has helped with History Camp many years. She always volunteers for every cemetery tour we do. What would we do without Pat Terrell? Thank you, Pat, for all you do to save history in Eaton County and beyond. And there's another award. We would also like to recognize Bill and Carol Jean Stockhausen. So you want to come up? Their restoration of the 1854 Gothic mill here in Bellevue started back in 1977 when they purchased the 5-story, 80-foot tall mill with a 3-ton water wheel in the basement. The mill had been closed down in 1958 and then was abandoned and fell into major disrepair. It was targeted by vandals. There was a gaping hole in the floor big enough for a car to drop into. Despite that, the Stockhausens made the purchase and began years of work and major expense to restore the building and return power production to the mill, doing most of the work themselves. It's now a wonderful landmark for Bellevue and has become a symbol of the industry that helped Bellevue to grow. The Stockhausens are also were active in the preservation of the dinosaur bones that were found in Bellevue, opening the mill up for fundraising dinners. Bill serves as president of the Northville Historical Society, so he's busy around the state in his historic preservation efforts. We thank the Stockhausens for all they have accomplished.
All right, since I'm here, I guess I can speak. I would like to welcome another historical marker in Bellevue. We, I think, had the first, and now there's 2, and I'm glad to see it. So you guys did absolutely spectacular.
Thank you.
It's always great to see when we have people like this that are willing to give their time and their efforts and hard work and toil to preserve these landmarks. We thank you. First of all, I want to give a little shout out. We've got some historical commission members here, commissioners. I'm just going to have you raise your hand. Rich Rebecki and Deb Lewiski and Kim's the clerk. Mike Cox and Sarah Burleson, right? No, Gruesbeck, sorry. So we want to thank them, and others couldn't be here, but we want to thank them for their hard work. So I want to give a little story behind how and why we're here today. So I also serve on the Eaton County Commission, our Historical Commission. And one day when we were having a meeting, Pat comes in and says, we got a project I think we'd like to do. He said, I think we should restore the Dyer Kiln. And my first thoughts, knowing the condition that it was in and knowing how much money it was going to take and how much money they had, I was like, that's a tall order. But she had big dreams, came out here, raised some money, and then the fine folks of Eaton County decided to approve the Parks Millage. And with that, we were able to get some of the stones retucked in and secured, and hopefully we can get the rest of it done in the future. But that just goes to show that when you got someone who's determined and has a dream and willing to put the time in, things can happen. We just really thank you for that. Well, thank you all for being here today and to celebrate and reflect upon the Bellevue's most treasured historical landmark, the Dyer Kiln. This humble structure, nestled in our beautiful Michigan countryside, stands as a monument not only to our local heritage, but to the integrity and hard work that has shaped communities like ours across the country. The Dyer Kiln, constructed in the late 19th century, is a prime example of the lime kilns that dotted the landscape during a time when lime was a crucial resource for construction and agriculture. Built by Benjamin Dyer. Did I get that right? Thomas. Okay. This kiln was part of the larger network of such structures that contributed to growth and development of Bellevue and surrounding areas. Lime kiln was essential to the production of quicklime, which was used in everything from mortar to building homes to agricultural purposes and improving the quality of the soil. But the significance of the Dyer Kiln extends beyond the functional role. It represents the perseverance and entrepreneurial spirit of the people who lived here over a century ago. In an era before modern machinery and conveniences, the operation of lime kiln required not just skill, but also a deep understanding of natural processes, a keen sense of business, and above all, a dedication of hard work. As we stand here today, it's important to remember that Dyer Kiln is more than just a relic. It is a symbol of our community. It is of the community's resilience and resourcefulness. It is a reminder that Bellevue has always been a place where people come together to build, create, and sustain a way of life that honors the best of our traditions while looking forward to the future. Today, as we preserve and protect Dyer Kiln, we are not just maintaining a piece of historic history, we are keeping alive the spirit of innovation and determination that has built this town. We owe it to future generations to ensure that they too can learn from and be inspired by this remarkable piece of shared heritage. Let us continue to cherish and care for the Dyer Kiln. Ensure that it remains a proud testament to our past and a beacon of inspiration for the future. Thank you.
Tonight I'm the history part of the presentation, and I just want you to know that some of the historical commissioners, we wore these funky clothes as a salute to the hard workers, the lime burners, and how hard they worked. They were incredible to me when I think about the massive amounts of stone that they must have broken and lifted and poured and then shoveled it back out of the kiln. So this is our salute to them, is to wear these clothes. And then, thank you. We don't have names actually attached to too many of them. The only one we really can confirm is Thomas Roberts. But I'll get into that. So I want to also maybe mention a little secret, and that is that we've driven by this kiln for years, and we loved it. And I drove by it one day, and it looked like it was crumbling. So I was putting stones back in place in my Michigan basement, and so naively, I thought, well, to reconstruct this kiln, we'll just squirt some mortar in there and put some stones back in, and it'll be better. Well, it doesn't end up being that easy, right? Everybody but me knew that. But we got the ball rolling that way, and then we realized that it was a historic site designated in 1976, but the sign had never been completed, never finished either the research or the payment on it. Records are no longer exist on that, but there was no sign to designate that it was a state historic site. So you know the way it goes, you have to start all over again when you want to reapply for the state historic marker. So I found out that was an incredibly rewarding journey. It was a lot of research, you know, trying to dig into things and, you know, follow a clue here and there, go to the state archives, go to the Parks Department, had wonderful records, just follow any lead I could. And some of it doesn't exist anymore. So there are holes I wish we could fill in this history, and maybe someday things will emerge and there will be more things found out about it. So I hope I don't bore you with history, but I found it fascinating. There's a lot, you know, I think the characters in the history of this kiln are the most exciting to me. You know, the hard workers and how they decided to invest this much money. They invested $4,000, which in that day would have been like $117,000 into building this kiln. So they were gambling that they were going to get returns on it. I think they ultimately did. But let me start maybe back a little bit. Jim alluded to the fact that this Bellevue area is really unique in the mid-Michigan area because of the surface level limestone. And limestone was just a really valuable commodity. It can't be overstated how many uses there are for lime in the late 1700s and early 1800s. People used it for everything, medicine and cleaning. tanning hides. They later used it, making glass, tempering steel. All the list goes on and on. So it was an alkaline substance, so there were lots and lots of needs for it. People traveled quite a ways to come to Bellevue and get this burned lime ash. Now, almost anybody could make lime ash in their backyard, and there were a lot of small lime kilns scattered around this area, because anybody could dig up the rock, put it in a pile, add a bunch of wood, which of course they had tons of wood at that time, right? Everybody had wood in their fields, and they didn't want it in their fields. They wanted it gone so they could cultivate those fields. So a lot of people were making a pile with limestone and wood, and you'd strike a match to that, and you'd let it burn for a couple days, and you come back and you dig up that ash, and it was useful as lime ash and for the uses that they needed it, right? Mortar or medicine or cleaning. But it wasn't very pure, because it did have a little bit of that wood ash in it. So that's where this one became superior, because it separated the wood ash from the limestone, lime ash. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. I wanted to mention the Mr. Baker story. If anybody's read the Bellevue history, there was a Mr. Baker that started a kiln very, very early, when he was like one of the first 2 settlers here, and he decided he was going to burn limestone and make a fortune. And he did his first pit and burned his lime, and some things went wrong, like a guy got killed. And so he kind of gave up on it and started a different industry. But back then, he would be able to sell that lime for 20 or I don't know an exact price, but 20 to 35 cents a bushel. A bushel was 62 pounds. So I think that was a lot of money back then. Doesn't sound like so much now. But it would take 190 pounds of limestone, the rock, in order to make that bushel of lime. So quite a bit of work digging that up, and then that doesn't count any of the wood that he had to pile in there. At this point, I wanted to mention some of the other names that were written down in history as lime burners. Kimberly was a lime burner very early on. Hamilton, Sturtevant, Meach, Butler, Holden, Monitor. There was a Monitor kiln. I'm not sure that was the last name. And then there were lots others that weren't recorded. So the way this kiln works, and we've got some diagrams and this little model here. I want to thank Harold Messenger for constructing this model for us to be able to use and kind of visualize. But if you go around the kiln too, you see the arches. Arches stand out the most, first thing. The arches are where the wood was fed in. And it was fed in there and continuously fed in, so it kept burning all the time for 8 months. The limestone came up this ramp in a cart behind a pony or maybe a donkey. Most of the things that I've seen had the pony in them. So they came up here, and then the guy, poor man, had to shovel it back into the kiln. He'd shoveled it into the cart, now he had to shovel it back into the kiln. And they could put a lot of limestone in here. It burned gradually down, and sunk down. And then they would shovel it out. If you see the arch underneath here, that's where they shoveled the lime ash out. It didn't actually mix in with any of the wood. The wood was in fire brick, contained in the fire brick. And so the limestone just had to reach a certain temperature, and then it would crumble down and come down below. They had to cool it off down here, and then they'd barrel it up, put it into bushel barrels, wood barrels. So I did look that up too, and there was a barrel maker in town, and I imagine he did pretty good himself, because let's see, my figures here, I'm going to have to look at them, but this kiln generated something like 440,000 pounds, 14,000 bushels of lime ash in the 1 year that was recorded. There was a census in 1880, and in that year, they would, according to the price, would have burned 14,000 bushels of lime ash. That translates into 16,000 pounds, or 800 tons, of the lime rock that had to be carted up this ramp and thrown into the top of the kiln. Just to make sure you know, the roof on the chimney part of the kiln, that of course was not there when the kiln was in use. That was put in 1996 as protection for the limestone. The limestone likes to dissolve in rain and snow and so on. So the kiln was built about between 1877 and 1880. It was built. We only have the records from 1880, so that's where we start our reporting. And then it burned for 8 months, 5 employees, for about 8 years. And then Thomas Roberts, who's given the credit for building it, was injured and killed and later died from an accident in the lime burning process. He was run over by a traction engine, which must have been very heavy and hard. And so when he passed, then Charles Dyer, who was more of the entrepreneur of the business, it looks like they quit producing lime for a little while. And then Charles Dyer, got another friend, John Hall, and they joined up and had another lime works business here in Bellevue for another 8 years. So it really only ran for about 20 years, but it must have had an enormous production and an enormous impact on the village. Just so you know, there is still lime being quarried in Bellevue. It's down here at Cheney Limestone. But the pits over in the Keeney Nature Area, those pits, and where the ponds are, that was the quarry back when this was being fed limestone. And then later, it was quarried over across Capitol Avenue. And Harold Messenger can tell you much more about that part of it than I can. So you'll have to talk to him. So in the history of the kiln, it quit production about 1889, and then it sounds like it was purchased by the cement company, but it sat idle. And then finally in 1958, the cement company, which a huge industry in Eaton County, the largest in 1903, at any rate, huge industry over here behind the Keeney Nature Area. But this kiln must have sat idle. And then 1958, a farmer bought it, and from stories, it became like a hog lot and then a trash bin, and they must have thrown dead bicycles and everything in there. But finally, in 1958, they did have a cleanup, but after that, it became idle as well until 1976, about the bicentennial time, 1975, 1976. People decided that this needed to be cleaned up, protected, and we have someone here that helped with that cleanup, and that's Nancy Jones. She's sitting over here. Nancy's in the Bellevue Historical Society and has been a big contributor to this community for many, many years. But she remembers cleaning up the dead bicycles, and that the farmer would help with his tractor to pick up some of the old fence posts and whatever was thrown in there. So they cleaned it up in 1976, and Marilyn Frankenstein was the pusher and the mover that made sure that it was purchased by the Eaton County Parks Commission. And at that time, this half acre then became part of the Parks Commission, Parks Department. And it was owned by the Eaton County Parks Commission until the last year. Any rate, and now it's in the Eaton County Parks Department. And during that time, one of the parks directors was Steve Tuma. This was in 1994, actually, much later. Steve Tuma was parks director, and he decided that work needed to be done on it. Maybe we could get some grants. Maybe we could get this thing fixed up. And so they did a lot of work on it, and were able to get an engineering architect, an engineer, to report on it and evaluate it. That evaluation was very, very important to my studies and my learning on this. But at that time, they weren't able to get too much in grants, and not much was done in 1994. And so then we kind of jumped till now, and we've been grateful to have the cooperation of the Eaton County Commissioners and the Parks Department, and we're getting things done on it now. I should mention Jeffrey Bowen, the mason that did this. He was very interesting to talk to. He just admired the architectural, the engineering and the skill that went into building this kiln. The large stones, he says you just don't find those anymore, and they're stacked so correctly that they don't fall down in 150 years. He was very impressed, and he was thrilled to death to be working on this project. Unfortunately, he had some health issues, and he passed last December. We regret that immensely. What have I missed? I wanted to mention another couple people, and that was in 1994, Bernie Geyer was very instrumental in the research and trying to put together the history on this kiln. Larry Ballard was president of the Historical Commission, and he was behind some of the grant requests. And then I don't want to forget Joyce Miller. Joyce Miller is the Eaton County, or the Bellevue Historical Society member, and I believe we can credit her with the notebooks that were put together that I was able to go back and research things from. Joyce is deceased as well, but she was a hard worker. And then last but not least, I want to give gratitude to John and Diane Mays, and they came tonight because they did the drawing on the sign that explains how the kiln works. So you can drive up and you can look at that sign and figure out how this works. Without that picture, I don't know whether I would have figured out how this kiln worked. That and a couple other people that are way smarter than me tried to explain to me how this worked, and I think I finally got it figured out. But there's a lot of parts to it. I didn't go into the storage building. Notice those limestone walls. They're a little problematic. They may not be put back together. Jeff Bowen was really worried that they could collapse at any time. But you do have to admire the stonework on the arches, because those are 150 years old and they're not supported by anything, but just the correct placement of those stones. Somebody else help me out on how you engineeringly say that, but it's just stones laid against stones that's holding those things up. So they're going to try to support that. Mr. Powers, you making any progress on that? This is Chad Powers from the Parks Department. He's an interim director, and he has construction background and hoping that maybe we can do something to support those walls so it doesn't fall down. Now, I didn't mention, of course, there was a roof over that storage building, and we think it was a wood roof, which I know Bill Stockhausen said, how in the world did they do that with fire right next to it? But it had to be wood, so, but it must have been gone a long time ago. All right? You guys out there, there's a lot more to do with Bellevue history. There's a lot of more work to be done. We've got that cement factory thing to tackle. There's a monument in the woods we got to go get. There's still a lot to do, and the history is it's just cool to go through the journey of investigating these kind of things and learning the characters. Oh, we have some books coming out with some of the character stories, particularly the lady that owned this land and probably was instrumental in building the kiln. Her name was Felinda Sturdivant, and we've got a good story coming out on her. It's really fascinating how tough those ladies were and how much they had to go through to make their lives and then make a difference. So I think that's it, and our next part of this program is to dedicate the sign officially by the Michigan Historical Commission. We have tonight with us Delia Fernandez, Dr. Delia Fernandez Roberts. She's on the Michigan Historical Commission and also a professor at MSU in, I'll let her, history.
Yeah.
All right, we appreciate her coming.
Thank you.
It's a long way out here.
Right. Well, thank you all. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And to everybody who's spoke before me, I've learned so much just in this short amount of time. I had many questions when I was coming out here about the kiln. So I'm really excited to be able to learn from you all and to be here in community with you all. So I have just a short thing that we say when we dedicate our markers and a couple of comments, and then we can do the celebrating after that. Is that okay? Sounds like a good plan. So on behalf of the Michigan Historical Commission, the Michigan History Center, and our parent agency, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, congratulations! With this marker, you join a statewide community of people who understand the importance of sharing Michigan stories with children, adults, and visitors to our state. There are now more than 1,800 Michigan historical markers, each connecting us to our past, our communities, and by doing so, our futures. Markers like this always make me really excited because it combines two of my favorite things, communities and history. I love to see when the power of people working together to remember their collective identity, to shape a collective identity with one another. And I want to just remind everybody that it would be really easy to just let this kiln continue to deteriorate. It would be really easy to move on and to think about other things and to set your sights in other places. But that's not what happened here. Instead, after decades of being declared a state historical marker, community members and scholars, historians work together to preserve this history for the next generation. And I like to think that this kiln is not just a marker of the likely blood, sweat, tears, and also the burns that probably happened when your ancestors, when other early community members worked tirelessly to keep this fire going for so many years. And I also want to honor the families that supported those workers, because I know that they had to be fed. I know that they had to be taken care of and mended when they came home after those long days. A special shout out to the women who were there either participating or taking care of men who were working, because it takes everybody, right? It takes the whole family, the whole community to be able to support something like this. All of this labor was part of setting up some of the modern infrastructure of Bellevue in both homes and other buildings. But it wasn't just here that was affected by this, that this kiln helped contribute to the building of the state capitol, helped contribute to Michigan State, my university, that we have kind of the byproducts of this in Lansing there, also in Detroit and other parts and buildings and roads there, so that all these different parts of Michigan have their roots, their literal things that are underneath their ground or that they sit in, to right here in Bellevue. So as you continue to visit this site, I hope you can reflect on the effort and the work that went into all of this, to the kiln, to the marker, from the people refusing to forget this history, to the cleanups, to those who saved the records, maybe not knowing what would come of it, to those who went searching in the archives for the records, to raising the funds, to everybody who decided to get out and vote on that millage, and the labor of building the kiln and keeping that fire going over a century ago. This is an excellent example of what communities can accomplish when working together. Congratulations on your marker, Bellevue. And we should have rehearsed that part. Oh yeah. This is adorable. There it is. We get it. Oh. Ingenuity. Oh, a little more. There it is.
Thank you, Kaiser. Let's see. Kaiser's last name. Kaiser Bohms. Kaiser Hanold. Thank you, Kaiser Hanold. We thank you all for coming. We appreciate very much to have such a good crowd here and people that care so much. To all of you that contributed, I hope you know that how important that was towards this effort. And what else? Do we have anything else to do? Go back to the antique car tractor thing and get a snack, or cotton candy or whatever, but thank you so much. Be sure to study the signs, or, oh, I have literature here if you want to pick anything up and take it home with you. There's extra cards that'll explain some of the stuff, but an old picture that shows the ramp going up and down. All right? Thank you all.
So that was the dedication ceremony of the Dyer Kiln and the historic marker. It was quite an amazing event, and a lot of work that the Eaton County Historical Commission did to not only restore the kiln but put the marker. It's quite a process to get a historic marker. They have to do fundraising for the marker itself, and of course they had about 2 years going into this project repairing the kiln, because I remember talking to them about a year and a half ago or so when they first told me about this project. So very excited that they invited me to come film and share with you the dedication ceremony. And I hope you enjoyed watching today's episode. At the end of the whole ceremony, is after I was finishing up filming, I was invited by Pat Terrell, which is one of the lady speakers in this presentation, to go with her out into the woods nearby and see another historic marker from the 1930s that's in the woods out there. So stay tuned for my next video where I tell you a little bit more about that. And that's the next upcoming project that the commission has for the village of Bellevue. And so I'll be sharing that with you very soon. And until next time, when we take another journey into history, and hope to see you real soon on this channel. If you enjoyed any part of today's video, please be sure to hit the like button, share this video with others, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.